We are live on the Conversations That Matter podcast, and I think I'm coming through. Yay. I had some technical issues before starting. I'm not sure exactly what they were related to, but we did have what they were calling a blizzard. I'm looking outside now. It doesn't look like a blizzard. It just looks like some snow, but that could have affected some things. So hopefully the podcast goes smoothly. I did go outside a little earlier, and I did a little video just to promote the album. So I do have hard copies of it right here. So what it looks like. And I'll show you that, which also gives you a chance to see what it looks like outside in upstate New York. And then we're going to start the issue at hand, which is USAID and what's going on with some of these Christian ministries, the reaction to the funding cuts. And we'll get to all your questions, concerns, cries of outrage, and whatnot. So here's what it looks like outside my house. Hey everyone, just want to let you know my new album, Driving Down a Mountain Road, is available now at johnharristunes.com. You can also get a signed copy. This is what it looks like. And this is just an album that features songs that I've written. It's really a passion project more than anything else. A lot of people have said they enjoy it. I wanted to show you today in the video, though, I know a thing or two about driving down a mountain road because I live on one, and you might call it a hill, but it gets precarious in the winter, and boy, does it feel like a mountain road when the weather gets bad. I'm not going anywhere today, not driving on a mountain road today, that's for sure. Anyway, thank you for all the support. johnharristunes.com for more. God bless. All right, there you have it, and you can see my chairs around the fire pit, because the wind blew them there. We get just, when you live in almost a canyon, I don't know what to call it, hollow. I'm between two rock ledges. You get some good wind currents going through. So, well, we have a lot to talk about today, like I said, and I probably should have done this episode a day or two, maybe 3 days ago. But I really wanted to get through the stuff on Our Daily Bread, because I had that on the back burner for a little while. And because of that letter I received in the mail, I just thought, we need to talk about this. So hopefully people found that helpful. And yeah, if you heard that, there was a massive snowplow that just went down my street. Sometimes you can hear it through the mic. But anyway, we're talking about it now, and it is important. And this is an ongoing debate. It seems like it's intensifying, and I think it probably will intensify some more. I think more things will be uncovered. So this is an ongoing conversation. But what is unique about this podcast, I think, is I'm going to bring you some clips from a USAID talk in 2023. And this features, I'm not sure if they are all fired. I couldn't confirm if they're all fired, but the majority of these people have been fired or let go, or they're not working at USAID. And they're talking about USAID policies. It's the Brookings Institute showed or hosted this panel. And this is what it looks like. If you go on YouTube, you can find, if you don't want to watch the whole 1 hour and 38 minutes, you came to the right place, because we're not going to play the whole thing. But this was May 3rd, rather, 2023, May 3rd, 2023, not ancient history. This is not even 2 years old. And this is a video entitled Understanding USAID's Policy Framework. And if we're going to understand this whole debate over World Vision and Lutheran Family Charities, and now there's debates over all kinds of funding for Russell Moore, actually, did I say World Vision? World Relief is what I meant to say earlier. But World Vision now, of course, being also questioned, and all kinds of other organizations. We need to understand, I think, what USAID actually is, and the people who have received funding from USAID, what their expectations are. And you're going to get a framework. You're going to get an understanding of that from this 10-minute video. So I may stop it here and there, but if you want to get just the raw footage of this, it will be up on my X account later on today. After this podcast, I'm going to post it as soon as the podcast is over. So hopefully by at least by 2:00, if not before that, hopefully before that, you will be able to access that on my X account. So John Harris, 1989. But we'll play that clip, that montage, that 10-minute montage that I summarized this whole 1 hour and 38-minute panel and these speeches down to. And we're going to start there, and then we'll go from there to the Christian and charity stuff. So here we go. Buckle your seatbelt.
The second priority is to support partner countries to mitigate and adapt to climate change by leading partnerships and initiatives that reduce global emissions and expand access to climate mitigation finance. USAID's partners around the world are calling on us now more than ever to scale the impact of our climate assistance, including through the Just Energy Transition Partnership, the President's plan to conserve global forests, and Power Africa. Through PREPARE, the President's Emergency Plan for Adaptation and Resilience, we will also do our part to make sure the U.S. meets its goal of helping more than 500 million people in developing countries adapt to and manage the impacts of climate change by 2030. We will improve integration across global health programming, including in digital health, and invest in a stronger primary health workforce and community health workers capable of adapting to shifting needs and working towards universal health coverage. And the fifth agency priority is to help countries address the grueling economic headwinds that so many are facing in order to help them get back on a path of inclusive economic growth. Finally, and critically, the policy framework focuses on empowering and supporting our workforce as an investment in our impact and our effectiveness as an organization. By reducing burdens that needlessly trap staff behind desks and piles of paperwork, instead of directly engaging them with partners. By growing and investing in the workforce so they have the support they need to do the job they love without burning out. By informing our work with the latest development thinking and data, making it easier for staff to wield rigorous evidence, make informed decisions, and hone our tools for development impact to take those lessons forward. By prioritizing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and reforming aspects of our recruitment and retention strategies that have traditionally sidelined underrepresented voices and limited our potential as a development partner.
The international community.
Okay, so we'll stop there before we get to Sarah Rose. So the voice you just heard was Isabel Coleman, who is the former, and I say former because she left her job within 2 weeks ago. What could that have been? But she is the former deputy administrator of USAID, and she, in this, you hear, talks about a number of things that I think are concerning. One of them is this just energy policy. Essentially what that is trying to ensure that these developing countries that USAID gives some resources to are investing in alternative energy, not fossil fuels, but wind, solar, that kind of thing. And so there's very much a elimination of greenhouse gases, a left-leaning agenda here. Wouldn't be surprised if companies that are invested in these kinds of technologies are gaining from this. But this is one of the big priorities, of course. And another big priority is this DEI policy. And this is, she is speaking on behalf, this is important to realize, of USAID at the top level. This is an organization that has 10,000 people, or at least did have about 10,000 people working for them. They have 60 staff that were just fired, at least. The number's probably growing, and it's because they refuse to disclose information. That's why they were fired. People don't seem to understand that, or at least they're not reporting it. If you watch CNN, they're just saying, people in Africa aren't getting food and water. That's how they're portraying this whole thing. Humanitarian efforts are ceasing, but they don't tell you that actually there was a den of corruption going on. They would not allow the folks from the DOGE administration, or the DOGE entity, to come in and actually assess, look at the books. And so this was what led to at least the first wave of firings. They're reorganizing. The federal government's reorganizing this. They can't actually eliminate it. Part of the reason is because this organization though it was formed during the Cold War under the Kennedy administration through an executive order, 1998 Congress actually cemented this as an organization. And the whole idea was it was supposed to take other organizations in the general government that were doing similar things, fused them together under this one heading of USAID. And it was essentially, it was a Cold War measure to ensure that these developing countries wouldn't fall into the hands of the Soviets. That's obviously a very probably rudimentary summarization of it, but it was not meant or intended to be a charitable organization from the beginning. It served the national, the foreign policy priorities of the U.S. government. That was the whole reason for it. And now you have different foreign priorities, foreign policy priorities. And they're acting like, though, this is a big charity that people are depending on. And if they don't get these resources, we're just taking the food out of children's mouths. And this is a horrible, horrible thing. And obviously, this is taxpayer money. This is going to all kinds of places. And part of the problem is we don't know exactly where it's going. And we need to figure out where this money is going, who's actually getting paid, what kinds of efforts are being promoted here. There seems to be indications that not only was this, and there's verification of this, but not only was this going to fund transgender and DEI type normalization policies across the globe, this was also going to refugee resettlement. And there's, of course, with refugee resettlement, there is a huge problem because this has ended up being a means by which people can come into the country illegally by claiming asylum status and saying that they are afraid to go home because of retribution and persecution for whatever reason. And then they're given a court date down the road, and then they can disappear. Sometimes they're not vetted properly. There was a gentleman not too long ago in Michigan who stabbed his caseworker, who was an asylum seeker. I mean, these kinds of things also happen. You have Christian organizations receiving these people into the country, and sometimes they don't even have stories that are accurate. So it's a big loophole. And the previous administration was more than willing to make this a mechanism by which people could come into the country under sometimes false pretenses. And now it's being cracked down on. And USAID was one of the drivers of that. And they were doing things that the United States government could not do. The United States government couldn't engage in some of these things directly. And so they fund these kinds of activities through charitable organizations, even Christian ones. And this is part of what's going on with the debate over world vision. So you just heard from Isabel Coleman, though, the priorities of USAID. And you have to ask yourself a question. If those are the priorities of the organization, then the expectation is those working with this organization and receiving funding from this organization, partnering with this organization, are going to have to fit in those guardrails. They're going to have to be part of these priorities. And if you think that's just a one-off, listen to some of these other clips. The next portion of this comes from Sarah Rose, who is the former, and I say former because the same issue here, she, all of a sudden doesn't have a job over the last few weeks. Former senior advisor for localization of USAID. Localization is kind of where the rubber meets the road. This is where USAID actually puts boots on the ground and administers their plans. What are the priorities of localization? How does this money on in a tangible way actually get spent in the places it's supposed to be spent? Well, I'm glad you asked.
And partner.
The international community has been talking about locally led development, or country ownership, as it was called, sort of in the era of the Paris Declaration 20 years ago. But there is an opportunity to think about it in new and different ways now, really sort of underscored by this groundswell around diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, with new thinking about, how can we think about grappling with some of the inequities that have been baked into the aid system for a long time. I think that, of course, the Biden-Harris administration, one of their key priorities is inclusion. And so that is something that USAID has really embraced. We also have the Inclusive Development Hub that we've set forth in the Bureau for Development, Democracy, and Innovation in DDI. And this hub is really, framed around this understanding of inclusive development as an important angle to all of what we do and when we work. And when we talk about inclusive development, what we're talking about is really this approach that's built on the understanding that sort of all people in all communities with all of their diversity have a role to play in the development process and need to be able to bring all of those voices, that diversity of voices, to play in order to really have sustained results. And I would just highlight, too, that there is a very strong linkage, of course, between inclusive development and localization, right? I also want to reinforce that inclusive development, gender equity, women's empowerment, these are all aspects of the policy framework and really integrated into the various aspects of the policy framework. And it's also captured, these issues are also captured across a suite of policies that really sort of describe and elaborate on our commitment to inclusive development. So we launched our updated gender equality and women's empowerment policy in late March. We are anticipating a new LGBTQI+ policy later this year, which will build on and expand upon the existing LGBT vision for action. We're also updating our disability policy, and we've issued an updated youth and development policy just recently, or just last year. And then we're also, we have our Promoting the Rights of Indigenous Peoples policy, which really promotes sort of this thoughtful engagement on how to engage with Indigenous people. And so we're also providing, in addition to the policy, base, which is important, but in terms of how we bring that into action, what we are doing is providing these new tools and resources to really help enable our mission staff to be able to translate this policy into praxis. And this includes USAID's first guidance on inclusive development, and this will highlight sort of the roles of equity, of intersectionality, of localization as part of our development efforts. And we're also developing an inclusive development toolkit that will really help USAID staff, be able to, again, bring this to the fore. In terms of gender specifically, because this was something that
and measuring impact,
like USAID continues to affirm, right, that gender equity and women's empowerment is vital and important, right? And so the policy really underscores that that there are specific kinds of challenges that women face, that gender diverse individuals might face, that LGBTQI+ individuals face, and specific challenges that are faced by men and boys as well. And so lays out 7 principles to think about how to think through some of these things. We are also bringing to bear like workforce capacity issues to try to address some of these as well. And within the next 3 years, we are going to ensure that there will be sort of a gender expertise at all of our missions and all of our bureaus across the board, and are also working to strengthen our operational policy, our ADS, if you will, to be able to bring these angles into it as well. There is a key role for everybody in terms of thinking about how we advance locally led development. International implementing partners have very key roles with their technical expertise that they bring. They have key roles as mentors in capacity strengthening. We talk to local partners quite a bit who talk about the value that they get from their relationships with with international implementers in that case. When you think about local private sector as well, they have strong connections, innovation, et cetera, and relationships there. And of course, international faith-based groups have deep roots and good connections as well.
We really do have, I think.
Okay, at the end there, faith-based groups, she mentions. Make no mistake about what you just heard. Some are saying it's a word salad in the comments. I agree. There's a lot of repetition going on, but I think that she is saying something that's fairly clear if you really listen to what she's saying. She's saying that they have these DEI, intersectionality-driven, LGBTQ plus normalization-driven, really gender theory-driven in policies or priorities. And this is what they use to help determine who they partner with, who they give grants to, how their staff members behave. This is driving the entire organization, guys. This is not something that is off in a corner somewhere at USAID. This is something that is going on over the entire organization. Again, the title of the Brookings Institute discussion you are listening to is Understanding USAID's Policy Framework. This is their policy framework. So when you talk about World Vision, when you talk about Lutheran Family Services, when you talk about any of these Christian organizations that have received money, the first thing you need to be asking is, if this is what USAID is expecting of them, how are they conforming to this agenda? And that is something that I want to delve into more as we end these clips. But I don't know the full answer to that, but there are some clues, and I'm going to show those to you. So next we have Susan, right? I think the last person was Susan, right? So Susan, or Sarah, sorry. Sarah Rose was who you just heard. Now we're going to go to Susan Reichel, and she spent 13 years with USAID. and is now the CEO of the International Youth Foundation. Now, this is another important thing for me to point out because this happens a lot. It's called rotating door theory when it comes to elite theory. But this is the idea that there are elites in a certain strata of society, and they will, once they lose a job, let's say in the private sector, they can go to the government and vice versa. And they're going to reward their friends, the people in their social strata. Their loyalty is not to their people necessarily, or you could say it is to their people, but their people are now those who are in their same social strata, whether it's in the media or in government or in even, you could say Big Eva could, I think Big Eva tries to enter this strata, but has a hard time, and they want to be accepted, but they're generally not. So someone like Susan Reichel is a good example. She spent 13 years. She's loyal to USAID, and then she becomes the CEO of International Youth Foundation. Well, what's the International Youth Foundation? An organization that gets their funding. I don't know if they'll get all of it, but a good portion of it from USAID. So she's still basically doing the same kinds of things. And what does the CEO for International Youth Foundation push? I'm going to show you in a moment, but it's some pretty crazy stuff related to children and transgenderism. And this is what she has to say as she's on this panel discussing USAID's policy framework.
Development, where we're talking about inclusion, we're talking about decolonization, we're talking about issues. Many of you are members of the Coalition for Racial and Ethnic Equity in Development. More than 100 development organizations have signed on that. The administrator has leaned forward on inclusive development, obviously, as the deputy administrator talked about with inclusive growth. Several questions came in online about inclusive development and, questioning with the policy framework where, whether it's gender and women's empowerment, clearly the administration has made a huge commitment in the FY24 budget of, an 180% increase, but questioning by the community of, is this still ticking the box of integrating it? Okay, we'll count that as gender and women's empowerment. Or obviously youth. As the head of the International Youth Foundation, it's wonderful to have a youth policy. But again, how is that, as well as the disabilities community, the indigenous populations, LGBTQI, all the things that are so important for inclusive development, how do we actually have program dollars? And most importantly, how do we measure impact, right? I mean, Sarah, this is your area, and as well as Michelle's, of being able to show we're actually making a difference as we drive towards the Sustainable Development Goals.
When the agency puts
So driving towards sustainable development goals, that is another buzzword that you're going to hear a lot. And I'm going to explain to you how this fits into it. But sustainable development is something that I heard, I think first, maybe 2020 actually, or maybe it was 2019. It was right before 2020. And I probably had heard the phrase, but I didn't think much of it. It sounded like just trying to be efficient with resources. Sustainable development is somewhat of a broad concept, but it revolves around meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. That's the whole idea. So that is efficiency, right? That's what we think of, at least. That's in its best possible form. And this really came on the scene in the late 80s. But when you look at economic sustainability, what they're talking about is they don't want to run out of fossil fuels. So we shouldn't have fossil fuels. We need to ensure that we have these alternative energy approaches. That's sustainable development. These are the restrictions that Trump just did away with, that ensured that a certain percentage of cars had to be electric by whatever it was, 2031, 2032. These are the kinds of things that are making war on our economy and benefiting special interests. And this also now incorporates a broader meaning in that it incorporates the DEI stuff. So equity and access to health, education, housing. You're going to find, if I haven't played the clip yet, you're going to hear the clip in a moment, but I think I might have already played it, where they talk about universal health care. Literally, USAID is pushing universal health care. This is a policy that is controversial in the United States itself between political parties, and yet USAID blatantly pushing socialist stuff in other countries. That's what you need to think about when you hear sustainable development. This is globalist socialist stuff. and it's happening. Now, how does this apply? How does Susan Reichel and her International Youth Foundation actually factor into this? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I incorporated some screenshots to show you here in the video itself. Some of you might have seen them. If I can pull them up again. I'm not finding them. Oh, there it is. Okay. Press release from International Youth Foundation. International Youth Foundation to lead USAID's flagship Global Propel Youth and Gender Project. That's October 3rd, 2023, after this panel. So they're going to do the youth and gender thing. What is that? Well, they're going to improve reproductive health and family planning. What does that mean? Well, you probably know what that means already. Reproductive health and family planning and gender equality. We're talking about potentially abortions here. We're certainly talking about contraception in other countries. And what does it say? To dismantle the root cause of gender inequity. We're going to dismantle the root cause of gender inequity. We're going to smash the patriarchy, guys. We're going to use USAID to do it, your taxpayer dollars, and we're going to give it to entities like this because they're the ones carrying out the mission. So what's World Vision doing? What's World Vision doing? How does World Vision's mission fit in with this? That's the question you have to ask yourself. How are they driving us towards sustainable development? Now, I'm going to play a final clip for you here. This is from, actually, you know what? We're continuing here, I think, with Susan. So there was a question that she was asked, and then we'll answer that and get to the final clip.
Goals.
When the agency puts out a policy on DEI and makes it a major issue, what is the experience of that policy being picked up by implementers, by partners?
Absolutely. And I'm sure, Michelle, who's dialoguing so much with our partner governments. I was on the phone today with a big British private sector company, and this is exactly what we were talking about. And they were excited to learn about the work that's being done here in the U.S. on advancing DEIA, because they know it's important for this company, which, sorry, I can't reveal. It's a big global partnership IYF is about to launch. And it was so interesting to share the experience of everything we're doing here with them and how we can be one community. So it has an impact, right, Michelle?
It does. This is such an issue that is really dear to my heart, and there are a couple things that I think are just really important that I wanted to pull out of the conversation. One is that in addition to all the new offices that we're establishing, the new policies we're putting in place, we're also doing a ton of work, and a lot of that is being done by our Learning, Evaluation, and Research Office and PPL, on helping our staff, foreign service officers, civil servants, et cetera, to show up at the table differently. Mm-hmm. We're doing tons of trainings, tons of sensitivity work around how do you moderate a meeting? Where do you sit at a table? What words do you use in those conversations? These seem like small things, but they change the tenor of the conversation. In addition to all that, we're also working on changing how we're evaluating each other and our colleagues and our work and our peers. Mm-hmm. So we're changing the way foreign service officers are evaluated. We're changing how civil servants are evaluated to make sure that we're taking into account their application of these things.
So I want to point something out. This is Michelle Sumilas, who is the deputy, and I don't know if she's been fired or not, because I couldn't verify online, but she either was or is the deputy administrator for management and resources at USAID. And what you hear her saying there, and the question that was asked was, with the partners, with the people that USAID is working with, the organizations they're working with, how are they implementing these policies? Well, you just heard all this DEI stuff. Well, how are we going to make sure that the people that we're working with also are interested in it? I mean, are they coming around? And now you just heard Michelle Sumilas say, yeah, we're training our people, our staff, I guess, how to even sit at the table, where to sit, how to talk. We're deconstructing everything is what you're really hearing here. We're deconstructing the way that we interact with each other. And this is making an impact with the people we're working with. That's the point, guys. The purpose of this organization is what it does. That is what it's doing. And that is USAID. This is not ancient history. This happened not too long ago. This is less than 2 years ago. This is what Elon Musk is walking into. And if you think this looks like the Longhouse, yes, it does. You're in it. You're looking at it. This is an organization that fundamentally from the top has serious problems, and every Christian should be suspicious of it, not defending it. Here is the last clip I want to play for you before we talk about World Vision and the rest of it.
Climate change. We have not talked a lot here about climate change. It is one of our core priorities. And with the new World Bank president just approved today, it'll be one of his priorities. But I think that a lot of the progress we've made over the years is being whittled away by climate change. And so how do we, development has often seen climate change as something over there. And it's really important that we really integrate climate change. And the administrator often says that we're a climate agency. So we're trying to really, as we think about integration, how do we own that and feel that?
How do we own that and feel that? There you go. That is what you have with USAID. You can go watch if you want. I left stuff out that I could have included. The whole entire hour and 38 minutes, and you're going to hear a whole bunch of this. That's what it was about. This USAID's policy framework is DEI, it's social justice, it's Marxism, it's every globalist. It's all the things that you as a Christian, as a conservative, see as your enemy. That is what this organization represents or represented. And for Elon Musk to come in and say, hold the phone, you're not even opening your books to tell us what's going on. We're going to fire some people. We're going to get to the bottom of this, freeze everything, is totally reasonable. They were never meant to be a charitable organization. Now, I'm going to play for you. This is a clip from World Vision, I believe. This is this is how this is being portrayed. I'm going to show you some articles from Christianity Today and some other mainstream sources that show how these shutdowns are being portrayed. You might already know this, but I think it's worth seeing after watching that video how this is being portrayed out there. So here we go.
Now there is a global hunger crisis, driven in part by regional conflicts around the world, including those raging in Africa, the Middle East, and Haiti. Millions of people face displacement, malnutrition, disease, starvation, and every day, children are dying. One of the most critical and effective resources in providing relief for crises like this is U.S. foreign assistance. With the support of foreign assistance over the last 20 years, extreme poverty and child mortality have been reduced significantly. AIDS deaths are down by 50%. Polio is nearly eradicated, and more children are attending school than ever before. In the U.S., foreign assistance accounts for less than 1% of our federal budget. But despite these significant results, there's a push in Congress to radically reduce this already small contribution. At a time when our help is needed most, these cuts would have severe consequences. They would undo years of progress and put millions of lives in jeopardy. Ask yourselves, which is the steeper price to pay? As followers of Jesus, we believe the answer is clear. We are called to serve the most vulnerable people, whether they live next door or across the world. The call doesn't change based on geography, and neither should our response. One of the most powerful ways we can do this is by stewarding the influence God has given us with our government leaders. We live in a country where our voices matter. Just 10 phone calls or 15 mentions on social media can capture the attention of a member of Congress. Your leaders need to hear from you that continuing to fight poverty and save lives around the world is not optional. It's essential. Use your voice and contact your members of Congress today.
So there you have it. That's from World Vision. That's how they have been in anticipating the possible shutdowns here. That's how they have been framing this whole thing. If you want to cut they're not even talking about shutting the organization down. They're saying cutting the budget is going to leave all these people in a lurch. Now, when you look at it, I have enough friends in Africa doing work there. When you look at the way that these NGOs combat AIDS, I'm here to tell you it is not the message that they're pushing isn't abstinence. It's not that we have a Christian ethic and this is immoral, this is evil, you shouldn't be engaging. It's through, and I don't know whether the stats they cited are actually accurate or not. I mean, they have certainly an incentive to try to show that they're doing good work, but it's through things like treatments, medical treatments. It's through barriers, sexual barriers. It's, handing out condoms. I mean, these are the kinds of things they do. They provide, a lot of these NGOs provide abortions. They give out condoms. I mean, it's that kind of thing that they're spreading to these other places. Now, where does World Vision fit into this? I'm not exactly sure, but I'm going to show you something in a minute that does raise an eyebrow on exactly what they're doing in these places. But I think the bigger thing I wanted to show you from that is that they are so beholden to this organization that you just heard clips from their leadership on their priorities. They want that organization funded. They don't want it cut. They think if you cut it, you're taking food out of children's mouths. You're taking medical supplies out of these regions in which people need them. And so this is the play that has been going on out there. I want to show you some more articles from Christianity Today and some other places of how they're framing this whole thing. Let's start here. This is Christianity Today. And I've highlighted a few sections that, well, I did highlight. I guess my highlights are gone. I had to restart my computer, so I lost my highlights. But the title is this the end of USAID? Christian partners around the world suddenly fired, defunded without answers, worried that the new administration is done with this development agency. Yeah, they're a development agency. They're trying to get you to sustainable development. That's what they're doing. But the way they couch this whole thing is sunshine and roses. Musk announced that it's a criminal organization. So Musk, he's not a guy that's typically going to, he's not in government. This is, I think, his first time, as I understand it, being in a governmental role. And he doesn't couch his words. He just says what he thinks, and that's what he thinks about it. And so this affects Samaritan's Purse. By the way, not as much. Samaritan's Purse is about 5%. Franklin Graham said of their budget. And Franklin Graham said that, as he understands it, there's an earmark for emergency services. So if you have emergency services, there's going to be an appeal process whereby you can gain the funding that you need to perform those emergency services. So that's one of the things that's not being reported. Franklin Graham, obviously someone who was pro-Trump. And so he is saying, hey, well, we're going to still keep doing what we're doing. 95% of our funding comes from private charities anyway. If you're going to fund anyone, by the way, who's doing that kind of work, I would recommend giving it to Samaritan's Purse, because Samaritan's Purse, 95% of it is not USAID, and they're not dependent on taxpayer dollars as much. And he's actually not freaking out and trying to raise all kinds of revenue over this. He's saying Trump administration has said that they're going to, we don't know how this is going to work yet, but there's going to be an appeal process, and we're going to be able to fund what we're doing. And so I would just suggest their organization over an organization like World Relief, or I keep saying World Vision, World Relief, World Vision, either one. They give some tangible examples in this of people in need that would be hurt with this funding being cut. And that's pretty much the gist of this article. They say the way it works is USAID staffers outline a need and a solution, like building a well for thirsty people, and they form it into a project. And then a faith-based or nonprofit charity comes in and implements the project, and they apply for U.S. foreign assistance to complete it. Now, is this really the way that we want the government running? And one of the things that I get frustrated about a little bit is how the Democrats are saying this whole thing is unconstitutional. The president doesn't have the authority to eliminate this organization. This organization came into being by executive order. Now, I don't see in the Constitution where that is a constitutional thing under the presidential powers, but you might be able to try to justify it under his role as the commander-in-chief, and this was a Cold War measure. Okay, I don't think that flies, but let's just say it flies. And then President Trump comes in and eliminates it under executive order. Now, he hasn't actually done that. They're restructuring the organization. That's what they're doing. There have been things said that seem to indicate they're getting rid of it, but really they don't have the authority because Congress enshrined it in 1998. So Congress has the authority to get actually rid of it. So they're just restructuring it. But why can't President Donald Trump do that? Why isn't there an outcry about the fact the organization exists in the first place for constitutional reasons? That's my question. It's so unconstitutional to get rid of it. Well, was it constitutional to implement it in the first place? It was by executive order it came into being. That's an interesting question to ponder. And it's not for the purposes of this podcast to go into great detail on that, but I just want to point that out. The Democrats don't seem to, obviously, Democrats do this a lot, but they don't apply their logic evenly. So Christianity Today is in full defense of this particular organization, this government organization. You have an article from Time Magazine, and they're getting in on specifically the Christian aspect of this, how Christian groups are responding to Trump's foreign aid freeze. And they outline World Relief. It's the first one in this, an evangelical charity. And they quote Matthew Sorens, who he just always seems to be there when the topic of immigration comes up, to say how Christians are obligated to essentially assist in illegal immigration. But here he is saying that they have to stop all work. We were not going to not show up at the airport when they had to pick up some refugees. We're going to show up. You know, we're bravely showing up, even though we were told to shut down all work. Now, here's the thing. You got to think about this. Put this in context. They're not being told that they have to shut down everything they're doing. They're being told that this spigot of federal money is not going to flow into them for a limited period of time so they can evaluate what's going on. That means the organization can still fund themselves, and that is happening. They're freaking out, and they're telling people, fund us so we can continue our work of things like refugee resettlement. They were getting a lot of money for this, a lot of money. I think I had the figure somewhere. I have to find it again. But, I think actually, do I have it? Let's see. I think it's right here. Yeah, I think I actually do have it pulled up because Megan Basham pulled that up on X the other day. $126 million. World Relief, $126 million in government grants. So there you have it. And so they're freaking out about this. And you have Time Magazine, getting involved in the outcry on all of this and saying that this is really bad. And so Catholic Relief Services, International Justice Mission is mentioned. And all these organizations, including Samaritan's Purse, add up to $476 million. So that's quite a chunk of change there, I would say. And so, of course, they're freaking out. Of course, I mean, they're relying on this money to do what they're doing. And so this is also painted as a negative. You have other, and I'm not going to highlight all of these, but you have a number of these things going on. This is from a statement from the Council of Bishops of the United Methodist Church, chiding the Trump administration once again, that this is horrible. You basically hate people. That's what I mean, I'm obviously surprising, but you just, you don't really seem to care about people. And that's why you're doing these horrible things, and you got to stop. World Relief, we need you to stand in the gap. People are depending on you. 4,000 refugees are depending on you. Here's what I wanted to show you from World Relief. This is interesting. This is the scope, which is a project of World Relief partnering with communities to end maternal and child mortality. And it blatantly says on this page, it's still on World Relief /scope. You can go there and follow along with me if you wish to. It mentions USAID. And so USAID is, I believe, funding this. Let's see if I can pull up yes, it's a USAID funded new partnership initiative. So it's a new partnership. And you just heard how they're vetting new partnerships, or the priorities at least they have for new partnerships. And somehow World Vision fits into this. Well, what's one of the things that's going on here? It says maternal and newborn care is part of this. And if you read what it says here, let's see if I can find the actual says scope interventions directly supported improve access to community-based contacts with quality care for pregnant women. And that's not it. Hold on. I'm looking for it. There's a family planning side of this. Let me see if I search it. Yeah, there it is. Okay, under community health workers. Scope trained CHWs in the delivery of community-based family planning. This comes up 8 times on the page. Technical areas, reproductive age and children under 5, including family planning and reproductive health. There it is, family planning again, reproductive health. It comes up over and over and over. Family planning, conversations about family planning, community-based family. So this is just, this is used as language on the website. What does it actually mean, though? It doesn't go into detail. Does this mean abortions? I don't know. But normally when you hear the term family planning, what do you think? And when you just literally heard their priorities, these aren't pro-life people that are deciding where this money goes. So refugee resettlement, which we know has loopholes in it. We know that that's fraught with issues. And then we know that there's some kind of family planning thing going on with world relief. Doesn't smell good. I don't know all the details of everything. I don't know if anyone outside the organization does at this point, but it doesn't smell good. So to ask questions and want to investigate this is perfectly reasonable. And of course, this led people to now question other organizations and other people who are getting government money. So why did, for example, Christianity Today get almost $2 million in taxpayer grants? People are going on to the website. What's the name of that website that shows you the grants and so forth? USA Spending is the website. And they're finding things like this. They're finding out that, Russell Moore seems to, or, his organization seems to be getting almost $2 million, the Christianity Today. Well, what's that for? You have Lutheran Immigration Refugee Services making having millions of dollars apparently allocated to them for refugee resettlement or asylum seekers. And same thing that you see happening with World Relief. You have, here's some other things on X that people were pulling up. No, that's not it. Hold on. I think this is one of the things I wanted to show everyone. Yeah. The Land Center. I was a little surprised. The Land Center, Richard Land, former ERLC president. Apparently they're getting also money from the federal government. A lot of it. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. What's that for? We don't know. You have here, has anyone sponsored a child with World Vision? This was an interesting chart. They're getting taxpayer funds, over $661 million, apparently in taxpayer funds. They also have money coming in the form of contributions to the tune of over $827 million. And they're coming in from places like the National Endowment for Democracy, the National Democratic Institute for, I don't know what that says, humanity maybe. These left-wing organizations are pouring money into World Vision. Why is that? I'm going to have a conversation with my wife about this. We sponsor a child through World Vision. And there's a way that we can sponsor this child without going through World Vision. I'm going to try to figure out a way to do it because I don't know what they're up to. I do not know what they're up to, but this doesn't look good. And I already know from talking to Judd Saul, who is with Voice of the Voice of the Persecuted. I'm mixing that. I'm mixing Voice of the Martyrs, which is an organization I don't support anymore, with Equipping the Persecuted. That's his organization. But he's told me that, they're as far as efficiency goes, it's really bad. It's really bad. So a lot of that money is not making it to the people that need it, that you're actually sponsoring. So people are starting to ask these questions. These are questions that need to be asked. Check this one out. This is an interesting one I saw. This is World Vision, and they have overseas refugee assistance programs for the Western Hemisphere. Overseas refugee assistance programs. And specifically, it says enhanced protection and welfare conditions of vulnerable Venezuelan immigrants, especially unaccompanied, and separated children. Well, how would that happen? Unaccompanied and separated children? This is what's happening at our border when they show up with coyotes, whether the parents have paid for the children to come or whether this is sex slavery, whatever is going on here. That's the situation, and specifically Venezuelans, and to the tune of $4.8 million from the United States government. Something seems fishy about this. So I wanted to just give you the broader context of what's actually going on with USAID. You're not going to hear this kind of thing on other outlets. I mean, I know because I searched around. I was looking at other outlets and seeing what they're saying. And there's a lot of good information out there. For example, 97% of political contributions from USAID workers went to guess which political party? Democrats or Republicans? They went to Democrats. Yes, 97%. And of course, the press secretary for the United States pointed out some of the ridiculous things, millions of dollars for things like a DEI initiative in Serbia in the workplace, musicals in Ireland that are DEI a trans opera in Colombia, $47,000, trans care in Peru. I mean, these are the things that are being funded, and there's all these initiatives going on. We don't know because the books are just now getting open where exactly all of this money is going. And so it's perfectly reasonable to say this wasn't even supposed to be a charitable function in the first place. If there's an emergency situation, you can appeal that later. So keep doing what you're doing. In theory, you should already have some finances. You shouldn't be totally relying on the federal government, but yes, we'll continue to fund emergency things, but no more spending money until we figure out what's going on. That's what's going on in USAID. This isn't for the purpose of taking bread out of hungry children's mouths, which is how it's being portrayed by Christians who are at World Vision and other places. And I'll tell you what, in closing, I want to tell you, I'm very happy with my vote for Donald Trump. Very happy with it. More happy than I thought I even would be. And one of the reasons is he has, in the last 2 weeks, I think, exposed and cleaned out some of the big problems with Big Eva. Problems I don't think we know the extent of. And he is cracking down on these things. They're freaking out over it. And he's doing more good than I've seen done in the past, really, by almost anyone. I mean, I've been obviously working hard. I've written books to expose what's going on. You have Megan Basham writing a phenomenal book. By the way, Megan Basham, pray for her. She announced that she has cancer. I've known about this for a little while, but she's now made it public. And we're praying for her. Please pray for her. This is such a challenging thing. I do appreciate her voice. Let me say something real quick, side tangent here, that I appreciate about Megan. I have struggled in the past. I still struggle, I think, at sometimes with being a little bit jaded. And I think I just want to be honest with myself about that, where, I feel like I put my heart and soul sometimes into exposing and refuting the social justice stuff in evangelicalism. And I'm not a victim here at all by any means. I never planned to do this. It's an immense blessing to be able to have this podcast. I'm not making the kind of money that I would have made before at all, pursuing the line of work I had previously. But I get to be home with my daughter. I can walk into the other room and see my daughter, who distracts me on a daily basis. And it's the greatest thing. And I'm so grateful for all of that. And everyone who donates to what I'm doing, you support my books. The new book I have coming out soon on natural law, the natural order. Even my music is subsidized by this. I mean, I'm honest with you about where your money goes. I mean, it goes to feeding my family directly, and it goes to all the efforts, the documentary film work I'm going to be doing in 2 weeks. It goes to that. Anyway, enough about me. I've been discouraged over time to see people, especially larger voices, not care about these things, right? And then sometimes take information and then later on pretend like they are somehow very concerned about some of the things I've been talking about. And people like other people too, like 80 Robles is another good example. Protestia, things we've been talking about, and they won't give us the time of day. There's many cases like this I could point to, especially with conversations behind the scenes. Like they view us as the enemy still. But they will start saying the same things we're saying, use the information that we've been putting out there. And that's a little frustrating. It's not that, I'm a team player and I want to see righteousness prevail, but it does get frustrating a little bit because you think, are these people in it for the right reasons? Right. It's the same thing with even World Vision and Big Eva. Like I want to support guys doing good work, but the problem I've had is, I think, and all of us have had, is we don't trust institutions. We have been lied to so many times. We have seen deception. And then when there's someone else who's saying the right thing, we're a little slow to trust. It takes time to build that up, right? And I don't even blame people for not wanting to warm up to me or anything right away. That's totally understandable. I totally get it. I think you need to be a little cautious today with all the duplicity out there. Megan Basham, I want to just say this about her. She's got to be one of the best actors in this whole thing. She cares about the truth. She wants the truth to get out there. She is a team player. She will go on, whoever's wants to have her on their show, she'll go on the show to proclaim the truth. I don't see her have feuds or pick, she wants to be friendly and affable to everyone until they prove to be an enemy to her. And there's been cases like Neil Shenvi, I guess, is a good example of that, who starts attacking her. And she wanted to, be in good terms with someone like that until she's attacked. And I just have to say that's something that's been missing, even from many of the men who have been trying to do something similar. They just don't have that. They're trying to build their own platform, which, is a commendable thing. But we do need people that are virtuous, that don't care who gets the credit, that care about the glory of God, that care about the truth getting out there. And if they don't get the credit, that's totally fine. I think of Paul when he said, those who preach Christ from even ill motives to make his chains worse. He just rejoices in that. And I want to have that attitude. I confess, I don't maybe always have it. Hopefully, I think I consistently do. I think I do for the most part, but we could always be blind to our own flesh. And so I don't want to, say that that doesn't happen. I definitely have had thoughts like, man, why is that guy, that guy didn't, he didn't say those things. I'm thinking of a name that I'm not going to say because I don't want to be that way. But they didn't say those things 3 years ago. They were on the opposite side of this fight. So anyway, all that to say, I wanted to give a plug to Megan. I don't normally do this, but I just felt compelled to do this in this episode. She has been proven right through everything I said on this episode about the government funding. It's real. It's happening. Everything she said in her book about Russell Moore and Curtis Chang, is it Yang? Chang, I can't remember his last name, but Curtis, who did the after party, David French, these guys, I think it's Curtis Yang, getting taxpayer money. She's absolutely right. They were getting left-wing money from the Rockefeller Foundation. There was taxpayer money going into these left-wing causes for these kinds of purposes. She was called a liar. She was smeared, all of the rest of it, all the things that are said about myself, and she was right. And this week has confirmed it even more, and the coming weeks will confirm it even more. Be on the side of those who are right, who are calling it, and support what they're doing, support their efforts. That's all I got to say about that. Okay. I'll take some questions and comments, and then we will end the podcast. There's so many. So I'm not going to go into the comments that happened earlier in the show. I'm going to go to the more recent ones. If you have one that you left earlier in the show, just rewrite it, put it in the comment section now, and I'll get to it. John, is this whole finding of NGOs part of the GHWB's 1,000 points of light? I'm embarrassed to say I'm not exactly sure what the GHWB's 1,000 points of light is. Maybe I should look that up real quick. GHWB 1,000 points of light. That is, according to Grok, a phrase synonymous with the presidency of George H.W. Bush. Okay. Man, I'm this is out in left field for me. Sorry. The way Gavin Ortland and Neil Shenvi have treated her is reprehensible. I totally agree. It exposed them big time when they went after her, and she had all the receipts. So you can look up 990 forums. Yes, you can. That doesn't mean that you always know with organizations like VOM, which is being asked about, Voice of the Martyrs, what their efforts are going towards, but you can certainly look them up. You can certainly look up like taxpayer money, how much they're receiving. It doesn't mean that you know exactly what they're doing with it, though. But it's a safe bet that you should be suspicious when you see taxpayer money going to these organizations. Question, what about USAID for COVID? That's what Revoice is claiming they got for it. Yes, I've noticed this. I think Christianity Today is also claiming. Ironically, I mean, COVID was 2020, and they're still apparently getting aid in 2023. That's a weird thing to me. I think that things were probably my gut tells me that things are being taken advantage of, but I can't really say more about that. There's not much to say because we're in the dark. And this is one of the reasons you need DOGE or some kind of organization to go in there and reveal what's going on, which is why I'm really glad that that's happening. But yes, that is going to be, I think, the deflector. That is going to be and I want to know, okay, so it was COVID. Really? What's your excuse in 2023 for receiving that much money for COVID? Hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. It's COVID. That's really weird. All right. I'll take one more question and then I got to go. So I see a lot of comments here. Chelsea Clinton took $84 million from USAID. That's interesting. All right. I don't see any more questions. So we're going to end the podcast. Thank you, everyone. Please share this podcast around. I mean it. I don't usually say that about podcasts, but I think every American needs to know what's going on with USAID. They need to hear those clips at the beginning. And again, I'm going to put those out immediately after this podcast. I'm going to upload them to X. So you can go to John Harris 1989 on X, and you can find the raw clips of USAID officials, former officials in, I think, perhaps every case. and what they were talking about as far as the priorities of the organization, the administrative priorities. God bless you all. Have a good day, and we'll see you later this week. Bye now.